Rain. Heavy. Violent. The kind that doesn't fall. It attacks. Nora's hands are shaking. The blood soaking through her fingers isn't hers. It's his. The man slumped against her chest. The one they call Hyuksang, the black serpent. The one whose name makes grown men lower their voices in crowded rooms across all of Seoul, is barely breathing. His weight is crushing her into the alley wall. His fingers are locked around her wrists like iron, like letting go means dying, like she is the only thing standing between him and whatever comes after. Gunshots echo 2 streets away, sirens coming closer. Too slow, too late. He pulls her down, not gently, not carefully, drags her face level with his, and his mouth brushes her ear. His voice is broken at the edges, but dangerous, still so terrifyingly dangerous. Whom if they find you with me? He stops, breathes, forces the next words out. They'll kill you first. Nora's whole body is trembling. She should run. She knows she should run. Every single part of her brain is screaming, get up, get out, leave him. You don't owe this man anything. She doesn't run. Instead, she presses her hand harder against his wound, harder, until he hisses, until her fingers feel the warmth spreading through the fabric of his shirt, slick and dark and terrible. Then don't die, she says. Her voice doesn't shake. She doesn't know where that comes from. The stillness inside the terror. But it's there. And it's the last thing either of them says before the sirens get louder and Nora makes the worst, or maybe the best, decision of her life. She stays. 48 hours earlier, Nora Adebayo was nobody. That's not self-pity. That's just the truth of Hanseo City. A cold, elite, glass and steel metropolis on the Han River that runs on 2 things, inherited power and buried secrets. The towers are beautiful. The streets are ordered. The underworld is rotten straight through. She had 3 jobs. Server at the Grand Mire Hotel, the kind of establishment where a single bottle of wine costs more than her weekly salary, where the lobbies smell like money and the guests look through the staff like glass. Night cleaner at a medical office in the Gangnam Financial District. Weekend delivery driver for a courier service that paid under the table and never asked questions. 3 jobs, 4 hours of sleep, 1 goal. Her brother Kalechi needed surgery, not the ordinary kind. Experimental neurological, being trialed at exactly 2 hospitals in the country, 40 minutes from Hanseo City. The kind of surgery with a wait list and a price tag designed to crush hope before it fully forms. Kalechi was 22. He used to run track. He used to call every Sunday at noon without fail, some ridiculous story always ready. He didn't call anymore. The accident had taken that from him. The accident Nora had been driving when it happened. The one she replayed every night in the 15 minutes between closing her eyes and actual sleep. She didn't talk about that. She just worked. The night of the Grand Mirai Gala, she'd already done 7 hours of cleaning, feet burning, vision soft at the edges. She had a 3-hour serving shift, a freshly pressed uniform, and a specific instruction from her floor manager. Don't make eye contact with the East Wing guests. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't cause a scene. She picked up her tray and went to work. The room was loud with the particular sound of powerful people pretending to be relaxed. She moved through it the way she always did. Efficiently, invisibly, without looking up. She didn't see the man step backward into her path. She felt it. The collision, the tray tilting, the unmistakable ice-cold sensation of champagne leaving the glass and landing somewhere it absolutely should not. The room went quiet, instantly, like a switch. Nora looked up. The man was completely still, champagne soaking into his dark shirt, a shirt worth more than her rent. He wasn't looking at the shirt. He was looking at her. And the silence that had gathered around him wasn't the silence of shock. It was the silence of people who already knew exactly how bad this could get and were deciding how far back to stand. He was tall for a Korean man, broad-shouldered, sharp-jawed, with the kind of stillness that isn't calm so much as contained. Black ink climbed the side of his neck, the tail end of something larger, deliberate. the kind of tattoo that declared rather than decorated. His eyes were dark and precise and completely unreadable. He studied her. Too long, too intensely, like she'd done something that didn't fit any existing category, and he was deciding, slowly, what to do about that. Nora didn't look away. She should have. Every sensible instinct said, look down, apologize, make yourself small. Instead, she held his gaze and said quietly, I'm sorry. Let me get something to. You'll work for me now. Flat, calm, like announcing weather. Nora blinked. I work here. Something moved in his expression. Not quite amusement. Not quite anything with a name. Not anymore, Seo Hyun-woo said. She didn't agree immediately. Her floor manager pulled her aside and explained, rapidly, desperately, who Seo Hyun-woo was. Not in detail, in impressions, SEO family, old money and older power, controls half the underground distribution networks in the city. Don't make this complicated, Nora. Please. A number was mentioned. She did the math in her head and stood very still while the number rearranged everything she'd believed was impossible. She took the job. Temporary, she told herself. A transaction. In and out. She moved into a staff room on the 16th floor of Seo Tower 2 days later. His penthouse was on the 42nd. The building occupied a prime position on the Han River. All dark glass and clean lines. Seoul spreading below it in every direction like something he owned. The penthouse itself was minimalist in the way that only very deliberate people are minimalist. Not from poverty, but from decision. Every surface was black stone or pale wood or brushed steel. Traditional Korean celadon vases, impossibly old, sat in alcoves with no explanation. Hanji screens divided spaces without blocking them. No photographs, no personal objects on display. The home of a man who had decided nothing should be precious. A man named Jin Ho, Hyun-woo's chief aide, 50s, precise and permanent as furniture, gave her 3 rules in a voice like a door locking. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't ask questions. Don't go near the East Corridor rooms. The first week she barely saw him. He moved through his own space like weather. Present, directional, not something you stood in front of by accident. What she saw instead were his traces. A suit jacket left over a chair at 3 a.m., gone by 6. Files rearranged. A celadon teacup on his desk, always empty by the time she arrived, a faint ring on the stone. The kitchen prepared his Americano scalding. She noticed one morning that he'd pushed a half-finished cup away. Gone cold. She adjusted it. Slightly lower temperature, richer ratio. She left it without comment. The next morning the cup was empty. Neither of them said anything. The cup just kept being empty. That was how their language began. In small adjustments, in things offered without explanation and received without acknowledgement. In the space between the 42nd floor and the rest of the world. She learned in those first weeks that there had been a woman. It came from Jin Ho. A rare lapse. A sentence started in a room he didn't know she was passing. He's not like before. Before Ji-yeon, he was. He looked up. The sentence ended. Before Ji-yeon. She didn't ask. The fragments settled in her mind like a stone dropped into still water. There. Permanent. Altering everything above it. On day 14, she found him in the East Corridor at 2 in the morning. She'd gotten up for water. Turned the corner and stopped. He was standing with one hand flat against a closed door. Not pushing, not turning away. Just there. In the dark. Fully dressed. Standing the way a person stands at a grave without knowing what they're asking for. She should have gone back to her room. You don't have to stand outside it, she said quietly. He turned. And for a fraction of a second, just a fraction, something completely unguarded moved across his face. No armor on it. Nothing practiced. It vanished instantly. The wall came back up. Go to bed, Nora, he said. She went. But that fraction of a second stayed with her permanently. The moment he'd looked like a man instead of an architecture. On day 11, she called Kaleshi. She sat on her windowsill, the one east-facing window in her staff room. Seoul glittering below her in every direction, the Han River a dark ribbon through all of it. With her knees pulled up and the phone pressed to her ear, he answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was slower than it used to be. heavier. The accident had done something to his processing speed. The doctors called it mild cognitive fatigue, which was a polite way of saying everything cost him more effort than it used to. "It's Sunday," he said. "I know, I missed last week. I'm sorry. Where are you?" "Working. New job. Seoul. It pays well." A pause. "How well?" She told him the number. Silence. "Nora," his voice changed. "What kind of job?" "The kind where I'm good at it," she said. He didn't believe her. And he'd always been able to tell when she was managing him, building a version of the truth with all the frightening parts removed. He'd hated it when they were younger. The accident had taken some of his ability to push back, and she hated herself sometimes for knowing that. "I looked up the surgery again," he said. "Don't. The wait list, let me worry about that. I don't want you doing something you can't come back from." The effort of reorganizing the sentence was audible. "For me." She pressed her palm flat against the window glass. Outside, Seoul moved. Lights, traffic, the Han River carrying its own dark current below all of it. "I'm not," she said. She hoped that was true. "I miss you," he said. "I miss you more. Go to sleep, Kayla." She stayed at the window after the call ended, hands still against the glass, in the city on the other side. She thought about the teacup. She thought about the locked door. She thought about a man standing in the dark in front of something he couldn't open and couldn't leave. She thought, what are we both protecting ourselves from? And is it actually working? No answer came. She went to bed. She met Park Jae-in on day 12. Not formally. She was carrying files down the corridor when he came out of Hyun-woo's office. He held the door. The automatic courtesy of it stood out in a building where everyone moved with calculation. He was younger than she expected for someone in his position, mid-30s with a broad, open face, and the kind of easy energy that seemed slightly wrong for his surroundings. He looked like someone who had decided long ago to be warm in a cold industry and had been paying that decision's price ever since. He looked at her with frank, uncomplicated curiosity. "You're the one from the hotel," he said. "I work here." He smiled, genuine, no calculation. "I know. Hyun-woo doesn't bring people in. Not since—" He stopped himself. "You must have made an impression." "I spilled champagne on him," she said. Jae-in laughed. Really laughed. "Ayesh, of course you did." He shook his head. "I'm Park Jae-in. Known him since we were 16 at Daesung Academy. He broke my nose the week we met, and I've been loyal to him ever since. Make of that what you will." "That's a strange way to start a friendship." "He reset it himself," Jae-in said simply. Something deeper moved through his expression. Something he lived with rather than displayed. Held ice on it for 2 hours and never told anyone what happened. A lot of people in his position would have walked away. He didn't. The warmth in his voice was absolute. "That matters more than you know." She thought about that later. She thought about the closed door in the East Corridor. The hand flat against the wood. The man who stood between going in and walking away and chose neither. He didn't walk away. And did he, though? Something sat slightly wrong. Not about Jae-in, not exactly. The ease of him in a building full of edges. The way he'd stopped himself mid-sentence and redirected so smoothly. The particular quality of his loyalty. Total, unexamined, the kind that doesn't leave room for doubt because doubt has never been invited in. She filed the feeling away without naming it. She went back to work. Day 17, office corridor, a door slightly ajar. She wasn't trying to listen. The first voice, Kwon Dae-jung. She knew him from recordings, from the weight his name carried in every document she'd handled. Heavy, unhurried, the cadence of a man who has never needed to rush because outcomes tend to arrange themselves around him. Head of the Kwon syndicate, the Seo family's oldest rival, brutal in methods and patient in strategy. "You've gotten comfortable," Kwon said. "Comfortable men make errors." "I don't make errors." Hyun-woo, flat, unbothered. "You brought a stranger into this house." Silence. "She's staff," Hyun-woo said. "She's a liability." Kwon's voice dropped a register. "And you look at her like she's not." Silence. Longer. Then the second voice. And this one stopped Nora cold. A woman, Korean, controlled, precise, stripped of every warmth that wasn't useful. The kind of voice that had decided long ago that softness was an engineering flaw. He's right, the woman said. You're repeating your mistakes. And this time, Hyun-woo, I won't clean it up. A silence heavy enough to press against the wall. Get out, Hyun-woo said. Both of them. Quiet. Final. Absolute. Nora moved before the footsteps did. Down the corridor, filing room, door closed, contracts pressed against her chest, heart going too fast. She understood now. Not the full shape of it, but enough. She was inside something that had been moving before she arrived, and the woman with the voice like a closing door had already decided what to do about her. She should leave. She thought about Kalechi. She stayed. 3 days later, Nora collapsed. 7 a.m. kitchen. The tray half prepared, her hands on autopilot, and then the edges of her vision went white and the floor arrived without warning. Cold tile. Jin-ho's voice, raised, which she'd never heard before, and which told her everything. And then footsteps. Fast, wrong for the hour. Move! Hands, strong, certain, no hesitation, under her shoulders, under her knees, lifted before she could speak. I can walk, she said. You were on the floor 30 seconds ago. I can walk from the floor. Stop talking. He carried her to his bedroom. Enormous, spare, a traditional made-up knot decoration hanging above the bed. The only soft thing in the room. He placed her in it and pulled a blanket across her like it was simply the next necessary thing. A private physician arrived within 20 minutes. So clinical, direct, severe dehydration, nutritional depletion, permanent damage if this pace continued. Hyun-woo did not take that well. After the doctor left, he stood at the window with his back to her. The Han River far below, Seoul enormous and indifferent beyond the glass. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the held-in version of something significant. How long, he said. 2 years, she said, before he'd finished asking. He turned, his expression doing something difficult, working hard to stay closed. Why? She told him. About Kalechi, about the surgery, and then, without deciding to, the accident came out too. All of it. The shape of the guilt she'd been carrying since the night a car went wrong, and a life changed, and she'd been the one driving, in her own voice. Are in the quiet of a room worth more than she'd earned in 2 years. He didn't speak while she talked. When she finished, the room was very still. He crossed to the chair beside the bed. Not the bed, the chair, carefully, and sat down. Sleep, he said. I have work. You don't. Hyun-woo? The work will be there. A pause, quieter. Sleep. She looked at him sitting in that chair like he intended to remain in it, like it was simply decided. She slept. When she woke 3 hours later, he was still there, laptop open, reading glasses on his face, and something about those glasses, their quiet ordinariness on a man who wore his power like a second skin, tightened something in her chest unexpectedly, a version of him that existed only in private. She understood she was probably the only person in this building who'd seen it. He looked up. Where there's food, he said. A tray on the nightstand. Myeokguk, seaweed soup, the kind for recovery, not from the staff kitchen. His. She looked at it, at him. Why are you doing this? She asked. He removed the glasses, set them down precisely, looked at them rather than at her. I don't know, he said. It was the most honest thing she'd heard him say. She recovered. He restructured her schedule without explanation, made Jin-ho absorb the rest, said nothing about it. She said nothing either. The Americano cups kept communicating on their behalf. One morning, a test she wasn't fully conscious of running. She moved his cup slightly from its usual position. Just slightly. When she returned, it had been moved back. Precisely. Exactly where it belonged. She almost smiled. The evenings got complicated. He started staying in the main room when she was in it, reading, working, sometimes a book. She noticed the spines, Korean history, classical poetry, a worn copy of something by Yi-sang. Just present, in the same space, in a way that hadn't existed before the collapse, and she started finding reasons to stay a little longer than the work required. One more file. There's something that didn't need reorganizing. She knew what she was doing. She told herself she didn't. Then one evening she looked up from the side table and found him watching her with an expression she couldn't categorize. Not the blank he used in meetings, not the wall, not the controlled stillness. Something underneath all of that. Something that had stopped pretending, just for this moment, in this room. "You're thinking too loudly," she said. The corner of his mouth moved. "Tell me something about Nigeria." "Why?" "Because I want to know," she thought. "My mother made a goosey soup every Sunday, made it Saturday night and let it sit. She always said it was better the second day. When I was 12, I thought she was wrong. When I was 20, I called her to tell her she was right. Did she take it graciously? She said, 'Of course I was right. I've been making soup since before you were born.'" Nora smiled, very humble. Something warm moved through his expression, something he didn't immediately cover. "She sounds difficult," he said. "She was extraordinary." Was. Past tense. He caught it. "I'm sorry," he said. Simple. No performance. She nodded. "Tell me something back." She thought he'd refuse. "I had a Jindo dog when I was 9, he said. Named him Muck, Ink. My grandmother hated him. Said he tracked mud through her Hanak every day without shame." A pause. "She hand-fed him rice every evening until he died. Told everyone it was to keep him out of her garden." Nora looked at him. "She fed him rice every evening." "From her own bowl," he said, flat and straight-faced. She laughed, the surprised kind, arriving before she'd decided to let it out. He watched her laugh with an expression so unguarded it almost hurt to look at. She pressed her palm flat against the window glass beside her, the Han River below, Seoul glittering across the night. He looked at her hand against the glass. Neither of them said anything, but neither of them moved either. "Drop a comment if you're feeling this. I promise. What comes next changes everything." It happened on a Thursday. She'd been working late, long past the hour when the penthouse settled into nighttime quiet. When she looked up from the desk, the light in the main room had gone amber and low, and she realized the building had emptied of staff, just her and Hyun-woo on the 42nd floor. She gathered her files. She was halfway to the door when she heard it. The geageum, a traditional Korean zither. 12 strings, mounted on a low stand in the corner of the main room. She'd assumed it was decorative. She'd never heard it touched. He was playing something she didn't recognize, quiet and unfinished sounding, the kind of music that feels like thinking rather than performance. He hadn't heard her stop in the doorway. His head was slightly bowed, his hands moving across the strings with the particular care of someone who plays only when no one is watching. She should have kept walking. She stood there and listened, and something happened to her. Watching his hands move across those strings, hearing music that existed only because he believed he was alone. Something rearranged itself in her chest into a shape she recognized and had been trying not to name. She thought, "I could walk in there." She thought, "I could cross the room, sit beside him, say nothing, and he would understand exactly what it meant." She thought, "I could stay." The thought was so complete, so close to becoming action. Her foot shifted, one small movement forward. Her hand found the doorframe, and then he struck a discordant note, stopped, looked down at his hands. In the silence that followed, she saw it, his shoulders, the particular tension of a man who has made himself into a fortress because the last time he wasn't, something irreplaceable was destroyed. She saw Ji-yeon in that silence. She saw the east corridor door and the hand flat against it at 2 a.m. She saw every piece of evidence she'd collected for weeks pointing at the same thing. This man's love had a history of casualties, and he knew it better than anyone. She let go of the doorframe. She walked to her room. She sat on the edge of her bed in the dark and pressed both palms flat against her thighs and breathed. That was the moment. Not the kiss, the doorframe, the one step she'd almost taken, the thing she'd almost chosen with full knowledge of what it cost. She didn't sleep for a long time. 3 nights later, kitchen, past midnight, she'd come down for water and found him there, standing in the dim light over a cold Americano, the kind of tired that lives behind the eyes and nowhere else. She made tea without asking, put it in front of him, sat across the counter, 20 minutes of silence, Then she said it. You scare everyone. He looked up. Every room you walk into, they all recalibrate, adjust, decide how to stand. Even Kwan when he was here. Everyone reorganizes around you. She paused. But you don't scare me. A long silence. You should be afraid of me, he said, carefully, like a warning he meant. Why? What have you done to me? That's not the question. It's the only question that matters to me. She held his gaze. I'm not afraid of what you are outside that door. I'm here in this kitchen, honey, with the version of you that drinks cold coffee at midnight and once had a jindo named Muck that his grandmother secretly loved. That version doesn't scare me. He stood, not in anger, in something else. The stillness getting too heavy to hold. Ji-yeon died, he said, so quietly she almost missed it. Because she was near me. Because someone wanted to hurt me, and she was the easiest way in. He stopped. I decided after that, nothing close, nothing that could be used. His eyes found hers. You understand what I'm telling you. Yes, she said. Then you understand why. Yes, she said again. Neither of them moved. Maybe I'm more afraid, she said finally quietly, of losing everything before I've had a chance to figure out what everything means. The silence after that was different. She watched the sentence move through him, watched him decide something, then fight that decision, then lose the fight slightly. He moved, slow, uncertain, nothing like the decisive man she'd watched operate every other moment of the past month. He leaned in. The kiss was hesitant, and then it wasn't. And then it was over. They stood apart, both breathing differently. She saw it in his face. The wrongness. Not wrong like a mistake. Wrong like something true arriving in the wrong world. But then, he didn't step back immediately. He stood there, close, the space between them thinner than anything, and his hand came up. Slowly, his fingers hovered at her jaw, not quite landing, trembling very slightly with the effort of stopping. She felt the warmth of them without contact, the almost touch, the distance between his hand and her face, barely a breath, barely anything, and in somehow the most significant space in the room. Then he made himself step back, one step, like it cost him a physical price, like something was torn rather than released. She understood then. He hadn't held back because it was easy. He'd held back because it was the hardest thing he'd done in years, and he'd done it anyway, because that was the shape of who he was. Someone who knew exactly what his proximity could destroy and tried, imperfectly and at great personal cost, not to. She picked up her water glass. Good night, Hyun-woo, she said. She went back to her room. She lay in the dark and thought about a hand that almost touched her face, about the distance between almost and enough, about the step back that she'd watched him pay for. She made a decision. She told him in the morning, stood in his office, hands still, voice even. I'm going to find other work. I'll finish the month. But after that, Nora, please don't argue with me. Her voice wavered slightly. You told me yourself. You know what you told me. I'm not trying to make this small. I'm trying to not be someone's casualty. A breath. I have a brother who needs me alive. He was quiet. I'll double your salary, he said. That's not what this is about. I know, he said. And then, nothing. He looked at her like something was moving away from him that he had decided not to chase. Because not chasing was the right thing. Because he had stepped back in a kitchen and would step back again here. All right, he said. And the rest of the month passed in the particular painful way where everything looks the same on the surface, and nothing is. She was aware of every room he was in. He was careful not to be alone with her. The distance between them was managed like a wound, not healed, just dressed. The Americano cup on his desk continued to be prepared her way, continued to be empty when she returned. She noticed. She said nothing. On her last evening, she went to his office with the final files. He was there. She hadn't expected that. She put the files down, turned to go. Nora, she stopped. The surgery. A pause. It's been scheduled. Full funding. The account was updated this morning. She turned slowly. He was looking at his desk. I'm not asking for anything. It's not leverage. A pause. Your brother should have his surgery. That was always true. It has nothing to do with... He stopped. It's just true. She stood in the doorway. Thank you, she said. Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. She left. She cried in the elevator going down. Not because it was sad exactly, because it was the most completely something could be. What it was and what it couldn't be, and what he was when nobody was measuring him by anything except what he actually did. She pressed her palm flat against the lobby glass before she pushed through the door. She went. The call came 19 days later. Jin-ho, calling in the middle of the day, sounding wrong in a way his voice had no architecture for. There's a situation, a warehouse, Incheonport district. He went in 2 hours ago, and I can't get anyone inside. Why are you calling me? She said. Silence. Because he trusted you, Jin-ho said. And right now, I don't know who else that's true of. She didn't think. She got in a car. She pieced it together later, from Jin-ho's fractured account and what she'd see with her own eyes. Hyun-woo had received intelligence about Kwon Dae-jung, precise, credible, detailed. It had come from Park Jae-in. Jae-in, who had held a door for her and laughed about a broken nose. Who had said he didn't walk away. That matters with the absolute conviction of someone who had organized his entire loyalty around that one fact, who had seemed so fundamentally warm for a building full of edges, and whom she'd filed away with a feeling she hadn't named. She should have named it. Jae-in had sent Hyun-woo into a trap, on orders from Seo Chung-hee, Hyun-woo's mother, who had decided in the cold arithmetic of a dynasty that her son's emotions had made him a liability, that the Seo syndicate needed to survive even if the man leading it didn't. Jae-in had told himself it was mercy. That was the part that would haunt her afterward. Not cruelty, conviction. He had loved Hyun-woo. She had seen it in that corridor, in the way he'd said that matters like it was the organizing principle of his life. And somewhere between the boy who'd held ice against a broken nose for 2 hours and the man standing in a burning warehouse with a gun, he had decided that protecting Hyun-woo meant being willing to end him. By the time Nora's car pulled up to the Incheonport, she didn't know any of that. She just saw the building on fire. The left side of the warehouse was burning, not completely, spreading with the patience fire has when it has all the time it needs, smoke rolling from upper windows. Jin-ho's men outside, held back by flame on one side and the particular paralysis of people who don't know what they'll find if they go in. She got out of the car. Jin-ho started to speak. She walked past him and went in through the side door. The smoke hit immediately. She pulled her collar up over her nose and moved deeper, past stacked cargo, past a forklift melting at the edges, past a section of wall entirely alight, the heat pressing against her face like a hand. Hyun-woo! Nothing. Hyun-woo! A sound, left, low. She turned and went toward it. He was on the floor against the far wall, shot, shoulder and side, both, conscious, barely. She dropped to her knees. You came, he said. Almost nothing. Don't talk. She got her hands under his arm. Can you stand? I need you to help me. Nora, I can see you're shot. I need you to stand. He moved, pushed upright with a sound that cost him something. She got her shoulder under his arm and they started moving. Through the smoke, the heat, toward the loading entrance ahead, doors hanging open. She was crying. From the smoke. Not just from the smoke. You don't get to die, she said. After everything, you don't get to die now. I'm not, he hissed through a section of debris. Not planning to. Good. Make better plans. They were almost at the loading entrance. Nora, the way he said it, she looked. Park Jae-in was standing in the doorway. She'd never seen him with a gun before. It looked wrong in his hands, not because he didn't know how to hold it, but because of his face, that open, warm face, the one that had smiled so easily in a corridor full of edges, full of grief now, complete, absolute grief. Jae-in, Hyun-woo's voice. Jae-in looked at him, and the grief in his eyes was so total that for a moment she couldn't breathe, because it wasn't the face of a man who wanted to do this. It was the face of a man who had decided he had to, and who had been living inside that decision long enough that it had become a kind of love, a broken kind, the worst kind. I did this for the family, Jae-in said. His voice cracked. For everything you built, for what Kwon would have. He stopped. You were 16. You held ice on my face for 2 hours and never told anyone why. I have been watching out for you since before you knew you needed it. His voice failed completely. I can't watch him take you apart. I can't watch that happen to you. Jae-in. Hyun-woo's voice dropped to almost nothing. Look at me. Jae-in looked at him. The devastation in his face was absolute. This is mercy, he whispered. He raised the gun and fired. Hyun-woo's weight fell against her. Wrong, suddenly, terribly wrong. And they went down together. Her knees hit concrete. Her hands found the wound immediately, pressing, feeling the warmth spreading fast. Jae-in walked away. She watched Hyun-woo's face. His eyes were open. His hand found her wrist. Same grip as the very beginning. Same iron, same desperate anchor. And he looked at her with something she'd never seen on him before. Not pain only. Something trying to come through the surface of everything he'd spent years being. I told you. The words came slow, broken. I told you. I destroy everything I love. Stop. You should have stayed. Don't you dare, she said, her voice breaking completely. I am pressing my hands against your chest in a burning building, and you don't get to tell me I should have stayed away? His grip on her wrist tightened. Live, he said. One word. Everything in it. Jin-ho's men came through the loading door. She was shouting before they reached her. She didn't remember what. She remembered the hands pulling her back, her refusal to let go, the specific quality of that air, smoke and fire, and the absolute bottom of something. His hand lost its grip on her wrist. She screamed, Drop a like right now if you're still here. Keep going. 6 hours. She sat in a private waiting room Jin-ho had emptied of everyone except herself and 2 men at the entrance who didn't speak. Nobody told her to leave. She pressed her palm flat against the waiting room window. Cold glass. Soul moving outside. Indifferent. Continuous. She thought about an Americano cup in a specific position on a black stone desk. She thought about a hand that almost touched her face and then didn't. She thought about, I destroy everything I love. Not as a warning this time, as a confession, as an apology. At hour 4, Jin-ho sat beside her. Seo Chung-hee has been removed, he said. No preamble. Permanently, Jae-in. He stopped. A long silence. Jae-in is gone. She didn't ask what that meant. He'll live, Jin-ho said. The doctors, he'll live. She nodded, pressed her hand harder against the glass. Yucky, she thought. Of course he'll live. He told me to. 2 hours later, a doctor came out and said what she needed to hear. She stood, thanked him, walked outside, stood on the pavement and felt something loosen in her chest. A knot that had been there so long she'd stopped feeling it until it moved. She took a car home. She did not go back. Kelechi walked in February, 3 steps, bed to window chair, physiotherapist on one side, Nora on the other, gripping his arm like she could will gravity into suspension. He sat down and laughed, the big startling laugh she'd almost forgotten. I did it, Nora. Look. She cried into his shoulder while he told her she was embarrassing him in front of the nurses. She got one job. Normal hours, smaller salary, entirely her own, an apartment with east-facing windows, good morning light, 8 hours of sleep, plants on the sill. She was fine, mostly fine. She thought about him with the frequency of someone trying not to think about something, present the way a scar is, not always, not loudly, but there when you pressed on it, there at midnight. Or there when she stood at the window with her palm flat against the glass, that habit she couldn't break, that gesture that had started on the 42nd floor of a tower on the Han River and had followed her home like something she'd accidentally packed. She knew he was alive. Information moved in Hanseo City the way it always does, obliquely through mutual contacts. And Jin-ho had sent one text in February. He asked about Kelechi sometimes. I thought you should know. She'd stared at that text for 6 weeks. She hadn't replied. He'd chosen the location. She knew before she arrived, The car outside her apartment on a Tuesday morning, the handwritten address in Hangul, and then her name in English beneath it. No signature. The handwriting she recognized without needing to think about it. She should not have gone. She went. A traditional Hanak garden outside the city. Old pine trees, old stone. The kind of place built for contemplation rather than display. Hanseo stepping stones across a shallow pond. Afternoon light going sideways through the branches. He was waiting at the far end of the stone path. She stopped when she saw him, the same in all the ways that mattered. The stillness, the weight of him, the quality of the space around him. But there were new lines around his eyes. His jaw was less set than it used to be. Like something he'd been carrying for years had been rearranged into something he could hold differently. He looked at her like a man who'd been failing to picture something accurately and was now confronted with the original. She walked the rest of the path. They stood in the afternoon light with everything between them like weather. "Kalechi," he said. "Walking," she said. "3 steps at a time. Working up to more." Relief moved through him. Real. "Good," he said. "You," she said. "How are you?" "Alive. More than I should be." A silence. "I wanted to see you," he said. "That's the only honest way to say it. I wanted to see that you were well." A pause. "I'm not asking you for anything. I need you to understand that first." "I understand," she said quietly. "Some things are different now. Kwan is handled. My mother is—" A brief, uncomplicated pause. "Gone from my life." He looked at her. "But some of it isn't different. Some of it is just what this is. What I am." A breath. "And I can't ask you to come back into that." She held his gaze. "I know," she said. "If you stay near me—" Quieter now. "There will always be another threat, another situation. I can manage it. I do manage it. But the people near me—" He stopped. "I told you what I do to the things I love." "Hyun-woo." He stopped. "I didn't come back for safety," she said. A silence so complete she could hear the pine trees moving. "I know what your life is," she continued. "I know what it is outside that door. I also know what you are when you're sitting in a kitchen at midnight being a person instead of a concept. I know what your hand looked like on that door at 2 in the morning. I know what it looked like when it almost touched my face and then didn't." She paused. "I know both things. I've known both things for a long time." Something moved through his expression at that last sentence. The almost. She'd named it. He hadn't expected her to name it. He looked at her for a long time. Then, one step back. Deliberate. The cost of it visible. "Live your life, Nora," he said, like he'd been rehearsing it, like it was the hardest sentence he'd ever had to mean. She looked at him. "And you?" she said. A long beat. "I survived," and he said. She walked back down the stone garden path. She didn't run. She walked like a person who has made peace with something, and also hasn't, and has decided to keep walking anyway. At the garden gate, old timber, worn smooth, her hand found the wood. She pressed her palm flat against it, cold grain beneath her fingers, the familiar gesture, the one that started at a penthouse window on the Han River and had never quite stopped following her. She breathed. She didn't look back. She wanted to. She kept walking. What she didn't see, Seo Hyun-woo at the end of the stone path, watching her until the gate closed, not moving, not looking away. Standing in the Hanak garden with the afternoon light going through the pine branches. That specific late afternoon quality of a day that is ending but hasn't ended yet. But he stayed there longer than was reasonable. He thought about an Americano cup moved precisely back into position on a black stone desk. He thought about a woman in a doorway on a Thursday night, 1 foot forward, hand on the frame, deciding not to cross a threshold that was already open. He had known she was there. He'd heard her stop and had struck a wrong note on purpose, had played it badly, deliberately, so she would have a reason to leave that didn't cost her anything. He had known she was about to choose him. He had made it easier for her not to. He thought about that now, in the garden, whether right and necessary were the same thing, whether the distance he kept choosing was protection or just a different kind of destruction. Slower, quieter, the kind that doesn't leave marks you can point to. When he would have his people quietly improve the security infrastructure around her building. Better lighting, better systems, no names attached, She would never know. He would know to the day when Kalechi took his first 50 steps, his first 100. He would know because Jin-ho, monosyllabic Jin-ho, who had never in 30 years volunteered unnecessary information, had apparently developed an entirely unofficial secondary channel dedicated to updates about one physiotherapy patient in a hospital outside Hanseo City. He would not appear. He would not send anything with his name on it. He would not cross the distance he kept choosing because the distance was the only love he was certain wouldn't destroy what it was trying to protect. This is what loving someone looks like when your love has a history of casualties. This is what it looks like when the most powerful man in Hanseo City decides that the bravest thing he can do is stay in the shadows and watch someone walk safely into the light. To guard her from a distance without credit, without acknowledgement, without proximity. To play a wrong note in the dark so she doesn't have to make a choice she'll regret. The hardest kind of love. The kind that looks from the outside like nothing at all. Nora walked to her car. She drove back to the city. She went home to her apartment with the east-facing windows, the plants, the one job, the brother learning to walk again. She made tea, not coffee, not Americano. She hadn't made either since she left. She sat by the window. Her hand found the glass. She pressed it flat and without deciding to, without knowing when it had become as automatic as breathing. Ice cold against her palm. Seoul outside, moving and indifferent and completely unaware of the 42nd floor it once contained her. She stayed like that for a long time, and somewhere in Hanseo City, in a Honic garden that was now empty of everything except old pine trees and old stone, and the last of the afternoon light. A man stood at the end of a stone path and did the same thing, not touching a window, but the same gesture in essence, the same reaching towards something separated by glass, by distance, by the careful and costly architecture of a love that protected by staying away. Two palms flat against the space between them. Neither one letting go, neither one crossing, not yet. That is where we leave them, not together, not apart, in that impossible, in an aching space between what is and what a person does when love arrives in the wrong life and refuses to leave anyway. When the most honest thing two people can do is press their hands against the glass and hold on. If you felt Nora, if you understood Hyun-woo even when he was wrong, if you stayed here all the way to the end, then you already know what to do. Subscribe, like this video, drop a comment below. I need to know, should Nora go back, or was the garden the ending they both deserved? Because the next story is already waiting, and I promise you, it starts even harder than this one did.